All right, and we are live. I am Robot Rallis, and here with me we have. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm mostly on Twitter. I do cube stuff, limited stuff, talking about magic, talking about Flesh and Blood if you're into other card games, and just generally talking about a whole bunch of nerdy stuff.
That's
Um,
that's
yeah.
great. Why don't you tell everybody how you got started with Magic, when you got into the scene, all that?
Yes. So I'd heard about magic years, like, I must have heard about it as a kid or something. Like, it's always sort of been there as the thing that I was like, what if I did that one day? It always looked like fun. Um, but what actually got me into it was the digital card game Artifact that Valve made, that completely flopped and was an absolute disaster.
I've heard of it. I didn't know that it flopped that bad, but I believe you.
It was an absolute disaster, but I loved that game so much. And then it died and nobody was playing it, so I was like, okay, time to find another card game because I really enjoyed this one. And so I decided to just go to my LGS and be like, okay, hi, I'm here to play Magic. How do I do that? And they helped me out. They helped me get a deck, and then I was good to go from there.
Well, that's pretty cool. Well, I started Magic in a
Yeah.
much more boring way. Some people randomly taught me how to play while I was in college. At that time, the current
Mm.
set was New Phyrexia. So
Oh,
right
nice,
before
nice.
Return to Ravnica and all that stuff, basically,
Yeah,
relatively.
I started playing on the day before the pre-release of the original Dominaria. So
Hmm.
that was a lot of fun. I drafted a lot of
Oh yeah,
Dominaria.
that set was amazing. That was one of the first sets that I actually drafted, and I remember I did pretty incredible. Some pretty fond memories from that
Such
one.
a good draft. It's such a good draft set. Yeah.
People tend to
Very,
unanimously agree that it is like easily top five, and usually like top two or top
yeah.
three.
Yeah, it's so like it's okay, it's nothing flashy, you know? Like it's not like Neon Kamigawa or something, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have a lot
But
of fluff. It just has like the basics, and the basics are good.
it's it's just really solid, and like every card is like really well thought out, put there for a reason, and it all lines up really well. I actually made a Dominaria set cube at one stage, which is basically all the parts of drafting Dominaria, uh, and taking out all the cards that don't work, like Rat Colony. Rat Colony was a great card in in Dominaria, especially for a starter player like me. I was like, okay, I can just jam 20 rats into a deck and they just all make each other bigger. It's great, but you're never actually going to get that many rats in in draft.
Yeah.
So I can cut that sort of thing. I can cut like the rares as well. Some of the rares that don't really work very well. And it made for a really fun like flashback draft set because I could just pull out of the box and say, okay, we'll just draft this like it's normal Dominaria.
And that's the advantage of Cube. You get to have all the actual fun experiences without having to worry about absolute stinkers and rares that were never meant to be played in limited, clogging up your
Yeah,
table.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got to put the work in and figure out what those are and how it all works out. But once you put that work in, it makes a really fun, really fun limited environments. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Cube, you actually have one that you're going to share with us today, and we're going to get into
Yes.
that. But first, we have a couple of things I wanted to go over first. And the first is the Magic 30th Anniversary Edition booster packs that they're releasing. And for anybody at
Yeah.
home who hasn't heard, these are packs of what are essentially not tournament legal cards with card backs that look like what I have on the screen here. But you can even open up stuff like Black Lotus and Ancestral Recall and Dual Lands, as well as a whole bunch of other iconic cards from Magic's history. But they're not tournament legal, they don't have the correct card back, and the price point for the product, the minimum buy in for this is 999 USD, which is a hefty price tag. And what do you think about that?
I think it's honestly, it's embarrassing. Like, I cannot believe that they actually decided that this would be a good product to make. Like, look, proxies. I'm all for proxies, and the best part about proxies is that you don't need to pay for them really. You pay like a couple cents a card.
Yeah, You just take like a Sharpie and a basic mountain, and suddenly you have a Black Lotus.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if I want an ancestral recall, I'll just, write it on one of those reminder cards, or, you know, there's a billion different ways you can do it.
Yeah, I mean,
And the, why,
there's
why?
like a whole
It's,
bunch of people have already made videos talking about like similar things, but there's websites you can go to where you can print out like entire cubes, gigantic
yeah,
lists of cards, 400 plus cards,
yeah,
with like beautiful looking altered card art from like very very wonderful artists, and you can have those printed on actual cardstock and shipped to your home, and like the whole cube, like 200 maybe
mm,
$300.
yeah, yeah,
I've
exactly.
played with powered cubes a lot of times, and let me tell you, they don't put real Black Lotuses in there. They make the proxies, they like print them out with a printer, or they get them online, and it doesn't cost
Yeah,
you $1,000 for the possibility of having one. And I think that's probably what I find the most egregious about this, the fact that they are essentially still randomized boosters, and that you could spend $1,000 on this product and not actually get your not playable Black Lotus or Ancestral Recall or whatever.
yeah. I'm looking through the list of cards on there now. And it's like, oh wow, I could get a Disenchant or Dwarven Warriors, a 3 mana 1/1
Yeah.
that can make a creature unblockable, or like Fear, double black, enchanted creature has Fear. Like it's
Wow.
not, it's not good.
It's
It's
like they
really not good.
It's like they went down a list of things that could make the product worse, and they just ticked all the boxes on the way down and decided that there needed to be zero redeeming qualities.
Yeah,
And the best
I
part
mean,
is, this stuff won't even be shipped until like early 2023 if you live anywhere other than the U.S. basically.
yeah, yeah. No, I've given up on like secret layers and stuff shipped directly from Wizards because getting it so shipping to Australia costs a fortune, and also like it will take half a year to get here. I
Yeah,
don't know why. It shouldn't, but also yeah.
I had friends. I don't even remember what Secret Lair it was, but they ordered those at the beginning of last year, and they didn't get them until like the better part of, I want to say, August, which is
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
absurd to think about. I couldn't imagine spending that much money on a product and just waiting that long. And I've paid for some pretty really goofy things from like China that took like 2 months to get here, and I'm like, hey, whatever, it's super duper cheap, I don't care, but that's just a little goofy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's look, at the very start, at the start of the pandemic, they didn't like nobody quite realized, and it's fair enough that they didn't have the systems in place to, make a robust global system. They just relied on things that were already there. It's 2022. It's October 2022. They can do better. They should do better, and it's not worth it. Like, uh,
Yeah, I have a lot
I
of
cannot justify buying these cards anymore, sadly.
same. And on the same token, in the same conversation, there's a tweet
Mm.
that I showed you earlier from Hasbro. I have on the screen for everybody on the other side of the camera, where Hasbro announced their plan to grow profit by 50%. Now, Mark Rosewater, I believe he stated on his podcast, Drive to Work, that Hasbro doesn't control the pricing, but I have to feel like that's. It doesn't pass the sniff test. I don't feel like that's accurate.
Yeah.
It just.
I They don't control it, but like
But clearly,
it's
the company's
yeah.
owned by Hasbro. Like, they have
If they're
fiduciary
gonna
obligations.
yeah, Wizards of the Coast is by far the biggest like generator of profit for Hasbro. So if Hasbro is wanting to increase profit by 50%, that's probably going to be mostly Magic and
And
mostly D&D,
and you know
like
what?
mostly Wizards of the Coast stuff.
That actually used to not be the case. It used to be Nerf. Nerf used to be number
That's
one,
true.
and then guess what
Yeah.
happened? Well, the pandemic
The
happened.
nerds came out.
The pandemic happened, and the nerds said, we want cards. and then
Yeah.
the Hasbro tanked really, really hard. There's like a bar graph somewhere that a bunch of people have been posting around about Hasbro's stock prices and why investing in Hasbro is a really terrible idea. And then there's been like a recent climb over the last like a year and a half or so, and we can see from the way that WotC's been like tweeting and talking about their record sales and how successful their sets are that like
Mm,
a
mm.
large amount of that has to be from Magic. There's just no way that it isn't.
Yeah.
And
It Magic just continues to grow and continues to put out new stuff, and it's kind of in a snowball phase at the moment. I feel like
yeah,
it's
but
something that
not everything can
yeah.
grow forever. That's the big problem.
No, no. Yeah, it is. That is the issue, and when it finally hits, what's gonna break, you know?
Well, speaking of things being pushed to their breaking point, our next thing to talk about is actually the Universes Beyond Warhammer 40k Collection Edition and
Yes,
regular Commander decks. Now, you actually really enjoy Warhammer 40k outside of Magic. What exactly
I
do you
do.
do?
Well, so in terms of Warhammer, I play 40k. I play the Custodies. I play a moderately competitive, style. I'm actually practicing at the moment for a tournament, a teams tournament coming up towards the end of the month, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I've just come back from a long time away of not being able to play, so I'm kind of relearning the game at the moment. But it's been good to get back to it. Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to play a few times, but the only time I actually did, it was like that mode where you have like the little battlefield and like a squad of like just a few
Oh, Kill
people.
Team. Yeah,
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 kill
yeah,
team, kill
yeah.
team,
Kill
and
Team's good. Kill Team's a lot of fun.
I played Necrons against orcs, and all of my
Mm,
people got burned
mm.
to death very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And so the
Yeah.
Necrons didn't really come back to life. They just, got incinerated.
That is the problem with Necrons. Like, yeah, in Kill Team especially because Necrons really rely on big numbers when they roll to come back. Like, if five things die, that's much more impactful in Kill Team than not, than in normal 40k.
Well, I mean, I'm sure I'll give it a try at some point again, but right now I'm actually between local game stores, so it's a bit of a
Oh, yeah.
both a time crunch and a location kind of issue for me. Now,
Yeah.
how
Yeah,
excited were you when you
absolutely.
heard about Magic the Gathering and Warhammer 40k coming together?
I I was excited. I was excited. I was a little skeptical, to be entirely honest. I wasn't entirely certain that it was gonna turn out to be something that I really enjoyed. But as the previews came and I saw things that I like, not only not only were, the card designs cool and, seeing the characters on the cards, both of those pretty cool things, but also the fact that their mechanics feel like they reflect what the actual like character does in on the tabletop game. It's really cool. Like it feels that the Tyranids feel like they're eating stuff and growing and spreading and everything. The uh the Imperium feels like it's the Imperium. The Chaos feels like it's the Chaos. And the Necrons, the Necrons are the deck that I haven't really looked at too much because artifacts just aren't quite my thing. But, I know that they do reanimation stuff. I know that they are all about the robots, and it's just, yeah, it's so good.
One of the things I think I like the most about this is and they started it I believe when they entered the Forgotten Realms that set, is the
Mm.
little flavor text keyword ability things, like a
Yes,
Mark of
yes,
Chaos Ascendant and then just like a hyphen and then what the ability does. I think that adds a
yeah,
whole lot to the flavor of it. It really kind of like it isn't really necessary at all. They could just have that whole line be deleted and just what the
yeah,
card actually does. But the fact that they've added that on here and like on the Forgotten Realm stuff,
yeah.
it really just puts it like way above and beyond what universes beyond, if you will, above what you would usually see on a card, and it just tells you a lot more of a story. Like I've not
Yeah.
really had almost any experience with 40k beyond Kill Team, and I don't know anything about the lore at all. But just by
Mm, mm,
reading
mm.
some of these cards, I already understand implicitly a little bit of what's going on. I understand what some of these characters are doing, what their place in the world is, like how the hierarchies work and stuff like that, important events inside the lore, and all of that just from reading cards that are not like in deep lore entries. And I feel like there's got to be like a gigantic wiki where all this stuff is spelled out in like 40,000 word long uh, articles and
It's
stuff, right?
it sure can be. Yeah, I mean, if you're wanting to learning about Warhammer lore, there are very in-depth wikis. I every now and then they go down, but there's also there's a really good YouTube series by, I think he's called Luton, Leutin. Let me just, I know, Lutain. There we go. Lutein. And he does all the lore. He's doing like all the lore, and he's got this massive long playlist of stuff where he just dives deep into straight into 40k lore. So if that's what you're wanting to learn about, it's a lot of fun. It's very long. It's extremely long, but it's good.
Yeah, they call it 40k, but because it'll take you about 40,000 years to read all of the lore entries. That's actually what you
That's
mean.
what it
So,
feels like. That is what it feels
well,
like.
I'm very very happy that you gave me that information, and I'm sure that people in the viewership who have not taken a deep dive into it are also very grateful. So thank you so much for that. Now, as far as pricing for these products, we've actually seen consistently over the past few years that Commander products have been pretty inconsistent with their pricing. We've had the regular decks
Mm.
that were for the longest $40, and then we had some like set themed Commander decks that were down in the range of like $24 to $30, and now we're
Mm.
seeing since the complete dissolution of MSRP that some of these products are literally sold like from the Wizards Amazon store and at local game stores at price points like much higher than they were before. Even at places like Walmart, I'm seeing like these. I'm extremely ignorant and not very good at understanding anything outside of my U.S. centric view. Are there WalMarts over there?
Uh, we don't have Walmarts in terms of like Walmart kind of does everything. Like we here in Australia at least, and in most of the countries I've been to, they you know, you don't have the literally everything shop. You've got the supermarket, you've got the big like retail stores for like clothing or like home accessories or like, that sort of thing. But yeah, no, you can't buy like magic packs at the supermarket or anything.
Mm. That actually sounds very refreshing because over here it's just they want you to buy every single thing possible. It's
Yeah.
like a gigantic capitalism emporium every time you walk outside in every single town in the whole country, basically.
Yeah. It is, yeah. It is unfortunate.
So
Unfortunate.
when I purchased my versions of these decks, I got them for about $55 American cash, and
Hmm.
now at least on the actual Magic the Gathering store on Amazon, people on my side can see it on the screen. Those products are selling for a hot $100 a piece, and that's actually like just straight up from Wizards being sold wholesale to Amazon for distribution purposes. And then it gets even worse if you look at the foiled out versions, which I think at the earliest I saw them for about $180 a piece, and now the whole bundle earlier today was selling for about 2 grand. Do you have any uh, considerations about how ridiculous Magic is getting as far as cost goes? I mean, I know we just talked about a $1,000
Yeah.
product, but now we're talking about a $2,000 product.
Yeah. Um, it's ridiculous. I mean, look, honestly, I wouldn't I wouldn't mind that there's a $2,000 product there because you can get those cards in, the regular commander decks.
And you can even play
But
them.
those are also, yeah, but those are also really expensive right now. So I mean, I'm glad that it's not $2,000 for the set, but I wish it wasn't $400, It's the sort of thing where A lot of good, some good things came from losing MSRP. A lot of bad things came from losing MSRP, and I think this is one of them where you can't be certain about what something's going to cost down the line, and it kind of feeds into FOMO as well, where it's the sort of thing of like, oh, this product went to $2,000. When the Lord of the Rings set comes out, should I buy 3 boxes straight away in case they go to, $600 each? And that sort of thing just stresses me out, and I don't really like it in my game, frankly.
I'm inclined to agree. I'm not very fond of it either. I think they've been cashing in on that a whole lot more than, yeah, well, I mean, I would say a whole lot
Mm.
more than usual, but like it's just a continuation of practices I've already had, especially with the advent of like secret layers and specific products that you won't be able to reprint otherwise, which is a big concern with these decks here. A lot of people are concerned that they're going to lose access to the Warhammer 40k IP and not be able to partner with Games Workshop the same way unless they shill out like a ton of money again. Which I mean, I don't
Yeah.
even know which way the money flowed in, but I have to imagine that like Hasbro doesn't own Games Workshop, do they?
No,
Games
no. Games
Workshop is like
Workshop is
is just their own
separate.
thing somewhere.
I'm pretty sure that yeah,
Well,
Games Workshop is its own company.
unless they
I'm not sure.
somehow get acquired by Hasbro, which I imagine that would be a very expensive deal, I don't think we're going to be seeing
Yeah.
a Warhammer crossover anytime soon, which begs the question of how some of these cards are going to be reprinted, and I think that's one of the main reasons we're seeing these cards kind of spike up in price and the decks go so high. Like even the deck bundle, which includes one of every deck, is still $324,
Mm.
and that's over $100
Yeah.
more than it was like a week and a half ago. Like, because when I bought these,
Yeah.
which was I want to say like a week exactly ago, the whole thing together was about 220 for me. Super duper, like
Mm.
that's a lot of money for me to spend. I don't like spending that much money on a hobby, but
No.
they seem cool, and I figured I could sleeve them all up and just have them in a box somewhere, and then I could have a game night where me and 3 friends just play Warhammer 40k MTG, and we just play the precons
Yeah.
together, and that'd be really cool. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and for everybody else, now that price tag has gone up to $324
Yeah.
because Magic is slowly becoming this game of speculation and finance, thanks to the decisions Wizards is making. But
Yeah.
that's all extremely
Yeah.
doomy and gloomy. Uh, I would want to talk a little bit about the secret layers that they've been releasing lately, but I feel like
Sure.
we've done enough of that. We're a little over
Yeah.
22 minutes in, and I'm very eager to get into something you've already shared a little bit about with me, and that is your Proliferate cube. So would you like to tell me how you came about wanting to make a cube and deciding what cards to put in it and why it has this theme?
Yeah. Well, okay. Should I? I'll start with how I first started Cube, which was um I was looking around online for Magic content, and I came across Caleb Gannon, who does really good drafts of the MTGO Vintage Cube, which comes around periodically, usually around Christmas and some other time during the year. And I just got hooked. I was watching so many of these videos, and it just absolutely hooked me, and I was like, okay, I need to try to do this. So I did. I proxied out a full vintage cube. It was terrible. It was horrendous. It was it was the worst design thing I've ever done, but it was such good fun. We played it with my mates a whole bunch, and yeah, that really got me started. Since then, I've had like a whole bunch of other ideas. I think I've built and taken apart like 3 cubes. I currently have 3 made that are functional and can run. And the main one is my Proliferate cube, which hopefully you can see. Um, so everything in this cube, every single card needs to refer to counters in some way. Um, so that can be as simple as, for example, the first card up there, Akban Javelinier, comes in, it enters play with modular, gives it a 1/1 counter. There we go. We've got counters going. Um, and then there's, you get some funny stuff like, what's the funniest card in here? There's,
So
there's a
far it's
few silly
probably
ones.
everything a majig.
Everything Majig's very good. Everything Majig. Okay, legitimately, it's a funny card. It looks silly. It's also legitimately very good. Um, it kind of it does do everything, and because everything in this cube, uses counters, being able to proliferate is incredibly important. But not every color gets to do that equally. So to sort of even out the playing field and make it so that you're not just drafting green and white, basically. Everyone starts the game with an emblem that lets them pay 4 mana to proliferate once a turn,
Oh,
which kind of balances out the field a bit, and it makes some strategies more possible than they would have been otherwise. Yeah.
it's
Things
certainly
to talk
interesting.
about here.
I have it all
Yeah.
pulled up on my side, and I'm just kind of mousing over one card at a time, kind of going nuts like a kid in a candy store over here. It's all a lot of cards that I've either played or seen in play. Cards that I
Yeah.
remember thinking, why didn't they just print this in the last set when it actually mattered? But and stuff like that. I really dig it. It like
Yeah,
to
you're
somebody
probably going to
who
see a few cards. Ooh,
go
sorry.
ahead, go ahead.
You're probably going to see some cards that you will never have seen before as well. Like I have delved very far into the depths of Scryfall to find weird and wonderful cards that that can do strange things.
That makes sense. I did the same thing when I was building my Atraxa commander deck. I just searched for
Mm,
anything
mm.
counter related, and I spent hours and hours on Gatherer just
Yeah,
looking through
yeah, yeah,
things
yeah.
that seemed interesting. Speaking of
Yes.
Atraxa, you want to give me some information on why that
Yes.
particular card is
Okay.
not here?
Yeah. So for those listening at home, this came up before we started talking. But I said, okay, we'll save it for the podcast because I think it's important. One of the big problems with this cube is look at the lands. Have a look at the lands, and you'll see that it's not good. There are not many good cards in the land slot because there aren't that many lands that tap for multiple colors and use counters in some way. Like we've got the vivid lands like Vivid Crag, Vivid Creek, they're good. And like the depletion lands like Sandstone Needle or Saprazan Scary, they're also good. But that's kind of it. There really aren't that many. So I've had to so the problem is with Atraxa is she needs 4 colors, and it's just not quite viable really to actually draft a 4 color deck or a deck that's 2 colors splashing a couple for Atraxa and something else because it just doesn't usually work out that way, unfortunately.
No, that makes
However,
sense.
this is something I'm looking to remedy by just, yeah, by hopefully releasing my restriction on the lands and just saying, okay, I can just run normal regular lands, not like shocks and fetches and that sort of thing, just like tap lands and that sort of thing to make it work. Um, because I think that, as nice as it is to have it all symmetric and it's all got counters, including the lands, everything has it. I think it would make for a better play experience if you could actually cast your spells more reliably and be able to go into more colors. So I think that's going to be happening fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a tally of the cards inside the cube right now, and it looks like, whoops, we're at
360.
328 before we do the lands. So yeah, with only
Yeah,
32 lands there, you
it's
definitely have
it's
some
not
room.
much, and yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'm going to cut all of the storage lands for sure.
Yeah,
I'm probably
unfortunately, the storage
yeah.
lands are a little just underwhelming, pretty much in every
They're
format.
just Yeah, they're just not very good, unfortunately, because they can't just tap for colored mana innately. Like if they came in tapped but could tap for colored mana, I would be all about it. Like they would be great. But no, not the
Or
case.
even if they
I'm
came in
probably gonna
tapped and
put
just
in
like had a counter on them when they came in or something.
something like that would be would be much nicer, much nicer. Um, Yeah, so I'm gonna take those out. I'm probably gonna put in the cycle of gates from Baldur's Gate that
Mm.
work like the thriving land. So they come in and you choose a color, and it taps for something and that color. Because I found the play pattern on those to be really good,
Yeah, they're
and
really
yeah,
nice. I
yeah,
think everyone pretty much like those. And
yeah.
so with 328 cards, split several different ways, 8 ways in particular, you're still looking at
Mm,
41 non-land cards a person at the end of the drafting experience if you're drafting the whole thing, which I guess with 360 you would be. So
yeah.
yeah, you do have a pretty good amount of room, like because you're only going to be using like on average 23 playables, so almost half of those non-land cards are just straight up going to be sitting in the sideboard the whole time. So yeah, you
Yeah.
definitely have the room for it, but I like this a lot. And on the subject of the depletion lands, two of those lands actually ended up finding their way into my Atraxa deck. It was really fun
Yeah.
having a land that tapped for two, just played multiple times and tapped for mana multiple times.
Yeah.
I really like that you managed to find those because people at the tables that I played at, they had never heard of them before,
And they'd
didn't even
never
believe that
seen
they were
them. And
real.
ah, no, they're a lot of fun. The way that yeah, it's really interesting because everybody has the proliferate emblem in this cube, and because if you ever tap it and don't, how do I say it? So if it reduces to one like counter, you can't then like you kind of want to proliferate it before you use it again. So you usually end up using that first counter on proliferate basically every time. So it's kind of like a land that says your emblem costs two less to activate,
Yeah,
which is interesting.
yeah,
It's
that's
a silly
usually how
little.
it kind of ended up going in a similar way in the Atraxa deck. I would usually end up either trying to use it to cast something super big early, or wait till I had
Yeah.
like a Atraxa down or something and could grow those counters up. Otherwise, I just
Yeah, exactly.
have to
Because they're
sacrifice it.
worth so much. They're worth so much.
So, you don't have a ton of planeswalkers in here, which is very interesting.
No. Yeah, so planeswalkers. So the funny thing about planeswalkers is they all have counters. So they all count. They can all go in. Um, and there was an earlier version of this cube that did have a few more planeswalkers. It had like eight or so, something in each color at least, and a couple more. But the problem with uh, the problem with them is that in a board stall, where you can't really get creatures past each other, planeswalkers kind of take over very easily. They Because they can just sit back and just keep doing something, get to an ultimate, and make major changes over the game. So I've had to cut back and really cut down on what planeswalkers are allowed in because they were often too good. So currently I have three planeswalker deck planeswalkers, which are notoriously horrendous, and one planeswalker from M21, which was actually decent. But he just, he works too well. I can't. Maybe I will cut him one day, but probably not yet. Um, yeah. Actually, uh, Liliana Death Wielder was the second hardest card for me to track down for this cube. Um, it turns out in Australia there was one copy of it for sale,
What?
and it was in the middle of nowhere, like halfway across the country. And paid a minor fortune in shipping to get it, but it's here, and I love it. It's such an unusual card that unless you've actively played with Planeswalker decks and like really made an effort to look into them, you've probably not seen it.
Yeah, it's certainly
Yeah,
that's Amonkhet, yeah.
yeah, that's how I'm gonna get. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't draft that set nearly as much as I would have liked to, but
no. Well,
I,
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Even if you had,
I
you
wouldn't
wouldn't
have
have seen
seen
it
it, yeah, because that was from one of
because it's
the
only in the Planeswalker decks.
yeah, which like nobody
Uh,
basically bought.
yeah,
Like, are you
exactly.
comfortable
Like,
sharing how much this Liliana was, just like
yeah,
before
yeah, yeah. I
shipping?
think it was before shipping. I think it was like 15 Australian, maybe 20 Australian,
Wow.
which is which is a lot. Like,
That's just because of the supply, like because this definitely
yeah,
is not a card that warrants that price tag.
yeah, absolutely. It does also. I think like the only place it sees use is Liliana tribal EDH decks, where they run literally every Liliana printed. So,
Yeah.
some people get it for that. I think it's the second most expensive Planeswalker deck, Planeswalker. Aside, yeah, with the first one being Sarkin something, who's really good in Dragon decks, it turns out. Yeah.
So
Um,
I had one cube that I made out of basically like commons and uncommons that I just threw together one time and it was really miserable. But it looks like you've done a whole lot of work with this one. I just like it. I like it a lot. Like Hapatra,
Thank you.
Slitherhead, Honor the God Pharaoh. Just a whole lot
Yeah,
of really sweet
it's gone.
cards. Either
It's gone
Snap.
through a lot of iterations. Yeah,
I didn't even know that card existed. Either Snap's one. That's what the commander
either
card
snap.
specifically.
Yes.
From the old one too,
Yep.
like the Oloro age.
Mhm. Yeah,
Wow.
it's yeah. You find what? Yeah, I have. Sorry, let me just bring it up. Ether Snap. Yeah, there we go. It gets reprinted actually, Ether Snap in Commander decks every now and then. But it's yeah, that's a card that not many people play because it seems like it's too, niche or something. But it's actually really strong. Like somebody can build up a whole board of tokens, and it's a 5 mana wrath, but it also will, shrink down my Skullbriar and, absolutely decimate someone else's stuff. So it's a 50-cent card. Like, seriously, people, just try it out. It's worth
Yeah,
it.
it also gets like completely destroys basically the like Surprise and Scary and Sandstone Needle and Peat Bog and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
as well as like
Yeah.
all the creatures with like modular and stuff, and all of
Yeah.
the like
Yep. Yep.
Hydras and Contortionist Troop and
Yeah.
everything like that. It's definitely
Is
a
your
very
is
spicy
yeah.
one that has like
Yeah.
basically hidden modes just because of how this cube is built, and I like that a lot. It shows that you put a lot of
Yeah.
care into this, and I really hope that like the few people that will actually watch this find value in all this interesting tech that you've uncovered.
Well, I hope so. I mean, if they ever want to find out some tech from me, I'm more than willing to, explain why something's in there or why I'm running it.
Well, when we get to the
Um,
end, you can go ahead and tell everyone what your Twitter is and other stuff if you like.
well,
So
we can wait for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
fair. As far as other limited formats go, not cube specifically, besides of course Dominaria, which we've mentioned, what
Yeah.
have been your favorites over the last few years?
Ooh, favorites. Okay. Aside from Dominaria, which was really good, I think Kamigawa Neon Dynasty is probably my favorite. That environment was so intricate. It had so many weird little connections between all the different cards. Um, there was also I okay. A lot of people didn't like Streets of New Capenna. I did. I really enjoyed Streets of New Capenna. I found it a really interesting set to draft, and I had good success. So that helps as well. Um, the of the Innistrad sets, I think I preferred Crimson Vow to Midnight Hunt. Like Midnight Hunt had some really, playing with werewolves and stuff is great, but I got at this around that time I was getting pretty tired of double face cards, and Crimson Vow having a good a good chunk less of them was a very very nice breath of fresh air for me.
That's fair. You might be a little ashamed of me for saying this, but to be honest, I was actually on a Magic hiatus during the
Mm,
release of
mm.
New Capenna as well as Neon Dynasty.
Neon Dynasty, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't play
Well,
either of those sets in any capacity, and my only
ah,
experience with either of them is like crafting some cards on Arena to play in Brawl, and then seeing a couple of them work their way into a cube.
yeah. Well, if you ever get the chance to draft Neon Dynasty. I highly recommend it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean,
I've also had. Sorry.
oh, I mean, it's not like I didn't think that the set would be good by any stretch. I was just taking a break from it, and then when I came back, everybody was already moving on to Dominaria. And at that point, I was
Yeah,
starting the
yeah.
channel and wanting to get my content going. By the time I started
Hmm.
recording, it was like Nuka Quick Draft, or like Neon Dynasty Quick Draft, and then just
Yeah.
like a Premier Draft, Dominaria United, and all that stuff.
If
And
United.
got
Yeah.
caught up in the quickness of that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, so many sets coming out. Everything's, moving through so fast. I'm enjoying it. I'm having a great time, but it's yeah, if you take a break, you can you can miss a lot of stuff, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm glad I took a break though. Like I was just getting a little overwhelmed, just kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
swamped. It felt like, especially where used to be playing, that things were not going very well. Like the shop was just not a place that I felt especially welcome. What used to be like
Yeah.
super duper casual games of Commander had turned into what was essentially like people getting super duper salty and angry, stuff like that. Sometimes
Yeah.
no magic is
Yeah.
better than bad magic.
Yeah. No, definitely. I absolutely agree with that. Yeah. No,
Uh,
sometimes a break is very warranted and very good.
Now, for me, as far as magic sets go that I've had a lot of fun with, a lot of people do not actually enjoy these sets at all, but I really enjoyed the Ixalan block.
Hmm. Yeah.
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I think one of the reasons that I loved it is because in the second set, Rivals of Ixalan, at my local game store at the time, I actually won every single draft that happened at the store that I was present for. It
Wow.
got to the point where people would watch me draft and deck build because they thought that I was cheating. And no, I just had like a really good run of luck and just took the trophy
Yeah.
home every day. And this was
Oh,
a
that's
really
good.
cool store where they also had like video games. And then the prize payouts were just store credit. So you could get like magic packs, which a lot of people got, but not me. I went over to the video games and I was like, yeah, I want to play this tomorrow. And so I'd just get a video game after winning a draft, which was
Nice,
amazing.
nice.
I
Yeah.
wish I could go back to that place, but it's 1,000 miles away now.
Ah, no. That's a shame.
And then
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
have having a good LGS near you makes all the difference, really. Like technically my LGS isn't the closest one to me. Like I've got one that's only like 5 minutes away, but it's just not quite as nice as the one that I go to. It's worth the journey, which is good.
Yeah, I would definitely make a considerable effort to go to a place nearby if I felt like there was one that was worth it. But down here where I am, like I'm in the southern United States, not so affectionately called the
Mm.
Bible Belt, and
Yeah.
things are not too great down here in that regard. It's pretty hard to find uh, just like
Mm.
magic players in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to have a good community around you.
I'm gonna pause for just 1 second here. All right, and we are back from a little brief intermission. And you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the more interesting cards inside this cube, that whose
Yeah.
inclusion definitely strikes me as interesting from the stuff that you say.
It's a little yeah. I've got a few pieces that are a little odd. Let's start with Rasputin Dreamweaver. So he's an Azorius card, 6 drop, and he's from Legends. And look, here's the thing: is Rasputin Dreamweaver a good card? Kind of. It's all right. It does mana ramp you, which is kind of good. But it's the sort of thing of like, look, if I can include Rasputin in a cube, I'm going to include Rasputin in a cube. What do we do cube for? Aside, having fun. After that, probably the next, more tame card is probably Garbage Elemental. They're a red 5 drop. And they have Unleash, so you can have it enter with a counter on it, and it can't block as long as it's got that counter. But it gives all of your creatures Arch Menace. So all, so I've gone through every single creature in the cube, and I have denoted whether or not it has multiple creatures in its artwork or not. some of them I've had to be a little like I've had to be a bit, I haven't been objective necessarily with it. Like is a person's arm a figure in the artwork? I think for that one I said no. But that was a lot of fun to go through and, reevaluate kind of everything that I was doing. Up next, probably going to be Ebon Praetor. This one is like the most.
Where is
Okay,
this one?
first of all, it's a black 6-drop. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, there we are. I see it. I found
Yeah.
it.
First off, the art. What is occurring here? What's happening? I've literally never had a good
This is
explanation.
some Alice in
of
Wonderland
these-
stuff or something, I think.
I really.
We're looking
The
at
more I
like
look at it, the more confused I get.
like a large rabbit, a little
Large-
demon thing.
An imp, and then like a merfolk or something in front of a guy wearing like a bird mask. Very odd.
Maybe a
It
skull.
also,
And then
yeah,
some sort of
yes,
religious iconography for the hat, and he's like poring over the pages of some absurd document.
yeah.
So some
This
Warhammer
is
40k
one of the
lore.
cards. This is one of the cards that I just don't quite understand really. But it also does funny stuff in game. It puts -2/-2 counters on things. That's rare. You don't get many of them around. And it also does a whole bunch of stuff.
It is also the creature
up
type
ne-
Avatar Praetor, which is
Yes.
not what I would expect it to be.
No, no, not at all. Yeah. Up next, we'll do Luvac. So he's a Simic 4-drop, and this is a card from the playtest series of cards from the from Mystery Booster Convention Edition. So he's kind of a funny one. Protection from modified creatures. This is before they put out the modified, like an actual modified creature. So he has a different definition for what a modified creature is in his rules text. And he also does fun stuff where I've tried to put in as many things that reward you for putting counters on your opponent's stuff as well. Get that interaction going. It's a bit more fun that way. And last but not least, Bog Humbugs, my darling. It's 1 and a black for a 1/1 flying insect, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, whenever it deals combat damage, hum that many notes of a festival song. If you can, put a 1/1 counter on Bog Humbugs. I love this little dude. He's so cute. Like he makes you sing in order to grow him. It's so good, and he was so hard to find. I was trying to find this card in 2021, 3 years after it got released in very limited quantities. I finally managed to track one down, and I have one like in paper now, and I'm so happy about it.
I mean,
I think
it's
those
very
those are
interesting.
the strangest. Yeah,
It
those are
also
the
seems
strangest and
very
silliest.
strong. Like this card just seems
It's
very good.
pretty good. Yeah, you drop this on turn 2, and it just starts pinging in for 1, for 2, for 3. You don't need to go very far to deal like 10 damage.
Yeah, that's
You do need to be willing to hum notes, though.
I mean, it reminds me of like
never know.
the Slith Ascendant from what is it? It's Eternal Masters or something like that, or like Modern Horizons or something.
Yeah.
It's like the
Oh
flying
yeah, no.
1/1 that when it deals damage to somebody, it gets a counter on it, and that thing's 3
Yeah.
mana, and it's still a beating.
Yeah, it still goes to town. Yeah, this card is like, it's not like competitive strong, but it holds its own, and it's not just here because it's kind of funny. Yeah.
How many other things of super?
That's kind of it.
interesting
That's kind of
interest?
it. Those are the. I think those are the most interesting cards. Yeah. Aside from that, I've got things like Phantasmal Sphere might be a card that you've never seen before. It's 1 and a blue for a creature. I don't even know if it's.
Oh
really
dear.
that good.
All I see
But
is a block of text because I'm
it's
still zooming in, and holy shit, this looks like a.
yeah, it's a big block of text. It's a big block of text from a very long time ago.
Okay, so
Um,
this is one
and
in a blue
it's
for a
just kind
zero
of neat.
one flyer. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 counter on it. During your upkeep, pay 1 for each of these 1/1 counters or sacrifice it. If it leaves play, put an orb token into play under an opponent's control and treat it as a star blue flying creature where star is equal to the number of these +1/+1 counters on
Yeah.
Phantasmal Sphere.
So it grows quickly, but you've got to pay for it. It's it. Cube Cobra says that it is played in 0% of cubes total. I think I'm the only cube on Cube Cobra that includes this card.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is certainly a card. What set is this?
That's No, not legends. Oh,
What
I
to say?
should
It doesn't
know
seem like Legends.
this.
It's not a legend.
Oh, it's not. Um,
It's a little flag symbol.
links. Give me a few on Scryfall. Here we go.
Yeah,
Alliances. That's it. Of course, it's
alliances. Yeah.
alliances.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be. And oh my god,
It's a
the
rare.
art's really cool. This is a rare. Wow,
It's a
they
rare.
must have really thought that this thing was just pushing the boundaries on power level, I guess. I
Well,
mean,
at the time, Blue just didn't get creatures. Blue got very bad creatures at the time.
I can kind of see, like, by today's standards, why this would be a rare. It's probably one of the most convoluted and goofy things imaginable. But,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
wow, that's pretty dope. Are there any other things specifically about this cube that you wanted to talk about before we move on to Dominaria United?
Um, Not specifically. It's gonna be changing soon. So if
Ooh,
you're looking at, doing stuff,
there
I know
is
it's changing soon.
there is one thing I
Oh
did
yeah,
want to ask about as far as the cube, the Ozolith. Um,
yeah.
did you get in when it was super cheap, or did you have to buy it for like the ridiculous sum it is these days?
No, no. I bought it when it was like $5. Yeah,
Look,
I bought it.
good
Yeah,
job. And
counters have always been my thing. So I've got like several commander decks that love using counters. So whenever I see a good counters card, I usually try to pick it up early in order to be able to, throw it into some commander decks and that sort of thing. But this one ended up here because it works way too well. Way, 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 way.
that's fair. Also, props to you for finding Skeleton Ship. That card's a
I
real
think I'm
treasure.
cutting Skeleton Ship soon. I'm so sad about it, but it's such a funny card.
Why cut it? Is a little bit too much?
It's so much mana. It's 5 mana for a 0/3.
It is. It's a very
That
goofy
taps to
one.
put negative counters on things. It's very goofy. It's kind of goofy, but also I do have a Demir card that I want to slot in, so it's like yeah.
I
It's
think
gotta take the place of something.
the biggest problem is that you can't very well proliferate the -1/-1 counters, thanks to how the rules work with +1/+1 counters.
Yeah.
So that's like the real
That's
killer.
something. Yeah, that is something that me and my playgroup did mess around with for a little bit. We we tried, so negative counters and positive counters um just don't interact anymore. Like you can just have both and you just have to deal with it.
It's just really hard to
Um,
track and very annoying to
which
look
does
at.
some good things. Yeah, it does some good things. I don't know that we're gonna go back to it really.
No,
Um,
that's fair. I mean, like that's the reason that they changed the rule in the first place is because it just
exactly.
looks like shit on the cards. Like a million
It really
tokens over
does. Oh,
here. And
I've got a green dice and a red dice, and the red dice is the bad one, and the green one's the good one.
oh, cool. I
You
have
know.
a Hydra, and somebody played a. Oh god, what's the name of the card? It's the one that's the board wipe. It's Black Sun Zenith. All right, so now I have a 15
Oh,
of
Black
these
Suns,
dice, and
yeah.
then like three of these dice, and what's my creature again? Is that lethal?
So,
I
so
don't
you're
even know.
proliferating this. Are you proliferating the plus counter or the minus counter? Are you? Yeah.
All right. Well, I love it. I love this cube, and I really, really hope that someday I get to draft it in person because I really, really like it. How often have you been
I
able to
hope so
actually
too.
draft it with a full table of people?
Well, before I went away, I was drafting it. So my local group sort of meets up for, a magic night every week. So we were drafting it maybe once a month or so, sometimes twice a month, and otherwise doing like commander, or sometimes we would do like pauper or something, and sometimes we'd do another friend's cube, that sort of thing.
Fair.
And honestly, once a month is a pretty good rate for a lot of cubes. I know a lot of cube curators out there just aren't able to find, a group of people to draft it. So it's a rough world out there.
Yeah, for real. Well, without any further ado, we're going to move over to Dominaria United. And thank you so much
Yeah.
for bringing your cube into the picture and talking about it some. But now I want to
Of
hear
course.
about your experiences with DMU because that has been the thing that I've been cramming so much over the past several weeks.
It's so good. Um, yeah, I've played. I haven't played as much as I'd like to, but I've played quite a bit, and I've just had an absolute blast with it. It's yeah. So it's really a set that allows you to kind of go wild and do almost whatever you want. Like there are set themes, like there's a go wide theme, there's a life gain theme, there's uh, a counters theme, there's a tokens theme, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do. Oh, and obviously the domain theme, but in the end, you'll kind of just build whatever you like. Like once you've drafted enough times, you can be like, okay, this time I'm going to build a deck that has defenders and a go wide strategy, and you can kind of get away with it a lot of the time. Um, there's enough sort of general effects, enough glue in the set to hold decks together, and
Yeah,
it really works out most of the time.
yeah. I think.
Would you like me to talk about some? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was about to say that I think that the card quality of all of the cards, for the most part, is just so high that there's just kind of
Mm,
like
mm.
a critical mass of playables here, and you're never going to be at a point where you're like, oh my god, the cards I have are just so miserable. There's only a few things in the set that are just outright horrible, and that's always
Yeah, I
good.
mean, I haven't been on the other side of a Shieldred yet, but I'm not saying that came long if I do. Yeah.
I've had the fortune and the misfortune of playing it and playing against it multiple times, and it is certainly a beating, but I would not put it at the top of the groan list. The list of cards that make me
That's
groan when
fair.
I see them on the other side of the table. But we will be
Mm,
talking about
mm.
that card. I guarantee you that there's two of them that are near
Oh,
the top of that
absolutely.
list.
Mm, mm.
So your first Dominaria draft, did you do the pre-release?
Yeah, I did the pre-release
Well,
over in London.
in my experience, all of the
Yeah, it was
sealed
really
pools that I've opened have either been a really subpar two color deck or a pile of five color nonsense. So which should you go with?
it was a pile of five color nonsense.
Yeah,
I was really hoping well, okay, it was four color nonsense, splashing the fifth color for for
domain.
domain reason.
Yeah,
Like I just simply had another tap land in there just because why not? Yeah.
yeah. I mean
It
that's how
it was
a
it
lot of
was
them go.
it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to put together because the problem with I don't like sealed as much as I like draft because you have a lot less control. You just have what you have and you've just got to build it out of that. Which leads to five color piles and less interact like less directed stuff, but here that's literally what you want. Like domain, it's a five color pile, it's perfect. So I think sealed, this is a really good set for sealed.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that this is a good bit better, especially with how prevalent the dual lands are. It just feels like you're a lot
Mm,
more able to kind of force those decks to come together in a way that you wouldn't before. And the format's
Yeah.
not as punishing in sealed. You really get a lot of time to set up where a lot of decks in regular draft can just run you over, which we'll get a little bit more into how the actual draft format works out. But I think
Mm.
personally that green red aggro is one of the best decks in the format. But as far as sealed goes, do you remember what your rares were for your first sealed pool?
Yes, I had the Green Defiler.
Ooh,
I
wow, that's the
had
best one.
yeah, it's the best one. It was really, really strong. Let me just scroll down a bit in my stuff. That was the one that stood out to me. I
Yeah,
remember I
it's
didn't have
beating.
too many actually that I could run. I had Danitha? I think I had a Danitha as well,
Oh
which
yeah.
I didn't have any like I didn't have any real auras or equipment, but
Oh,
a five
you don't
mana
even need
four
them.
four first strike, yeah,
Yeah, like
it's just a really good creature just by itself.
that's the
Yeah,
funny thing because it doesn't even seem like it should be a rare, like at all. It feels like a card that should be an uncommon until it's on the battlefield and you're like, oh, fuck.
and you realize that it's yeah, it just wins combat. Like you cannot beat it in combat.
Then God forbid your opponent ever has a combat trick, you just lose the game.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
I've
Oh,
been on
and
the
that's right.
opposite end of a Danitha, and then my opponent swung with it. And I'm like, all right, well I've lined up triple blocks, and I have +3/+0 in first strike in case anything goes wrong. And then they play out the trick
Yeah.
that gives a +1/+1 counter and indestructible, and I'm like, oh, well I just can't win the game anymore now.
Yeah, that one's rough. That one is very rough. Yeah. Oh, and I just remembered the last rare that I had that was playable in my pool. Was Guardian of Nubinalia.
Oh god,
So
that
it's
card's so good.
2 mana and list. It is really good. I don't know. Like, okay, we've had a lot of these effects recently where it's a 2 mana creature that you can do something to give it indestructible, and it usually comes with some other upside or something spicy to it. The problem with Guardian of Nubinalia is you don't need that second point of toughness. Like, I wish it was a 3/1. I wish it was a 3/1 so bad, but also it has enlist, so it's probably fine.
Yeah, like I think everything on the card just comes together in a way that makes it like such a ridiculous beating. Every time my opponent
Yeah.
plays this card on turn two, I just feel like I'm so far behind because every single removal spell I spend is trading for like the shittiest card in their hand. And then like they
Yeah.
get a scry too like every single turn, so whatever they want to draw, if it's a land or a spell, they're going to draw it. When I've had this card, I've scried 14. Like I just attacked 7 turns in a row with it and scried 14. I went through my whole deck.
Wow. Goodness gracious. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair play. That's rough.
And then you start playing big creatures, and then your opponent has to block with like bigger things to hopefully kill it because they've run out of small
Mm,
things to block. And then, like, if you ever want to trade it off, I've seen this card come back from the graveyard more times than I'd like to. People, like, I thought I got away with something giving it minus
mm,
two, minus
mm.
two, which is like one of the few ways to actually permanently kill it. And
Yeah,
then they just get
actually
it
deal
back
with
with
it.
like
Yeah.
Urborg Repossession or something. Like the
Yeah.
only time this card is actively bad is when you're on defense, and even then, a 2/2 that can gain indestructible is far from the worst card you can play. It's actually in
Mm,
my
mm.
top 10 as far as cards that I love to see and hate to play against. It is above multiple rares and mythics, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Like
fair.
it's above like
Very
Sarah
straight on
Paragon.
that. Yeah, I mean that card's not as great in limited necessarily, but it's also just like look, sometimes you just draft some flyers and win the game, you know?
Yeah. My
Yeah.
first event in Dominaria United was actually just a draft. I just straight up just drafted the format, and it
Mm.
was a big giant mess. However, it was green red, and I think I went like 6-3 in that first draft with zero experience. After doing a
Yeah.
just looking at the cards and doing a set review, and then I
Yeah.
like the next week after that wrote this article, and I'm actually going to go through these top 10 cards here, and I want you to tell me if you've faced them and what you think about them,
Yeah, sure.
without thinking about any of the stuff you've heard from other people and how good or bad they are.
Yeah,
Number 10 on the list for me is Wingmantle Chaplain.
Wingmantle Chaplain. That's the defender one, right?
Yeah, the one that
Yeah,
makes
that
birds.
card's good. This card's good. um, it's okay. Its baseline isn't great, but there's so many other incidental defenders in the set. If you ever get two of these cards, it's you're making four 1/1s,
Yeah.
as well as having two blockers that will make additional 1/1s whenever you play another defender. It's kind of crazy how good this and how surprisingly it works out.
So usually I see this card get played in like blue white and stuff, and I had a game where I
Mm.
made 13 birds.
Yeah,
I had
that's
13
what it
birds on the
feels
battlefield.
like.
The kicker, like the crazy thing was, one of the turns, what I actually did was bounce the Wingmantle Chaplain back to my hand, and that
Oh
was with
yeah.
Talarian Geyser, and then that drew me
Oh
another
nice.
card, and then I replayed my Wingmantle Chaplain and got like seven more birds, and my opponent just conceded on the spot. Like, what are you going to do against
Wow.
13 power and toughness worth of flying creatures? You
Yeah,
just can't do anything.
not much you can do about it. No.
Yeah, it's a goofy ass card, and I think the thing that really pushes it over the edge is that they put that Defender Tutor at common, the one that goes and
Yes.
searches up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's really interesting design decision. I like it honestly. I think a lot of people have criticized it and says that it makes the format kind of bad, but I really like it. I still don't even think that like Wingmantle Chaplain is the best deck, because like ultimately you are dependent upon one single card, and if you don't get that card or
Yeah.
you don't draw that card, like your deck is just a bunch of defenders, and I like
I don't.
that.
I don't think it's. Yeah. I don't even think it's that OP. I think it just means like maybe you need to draft more things with reach or draft the black board wipes a little bit more.
Oh, the fail case on this card is actually abysmal. So it turns out the super secret hidden tech is play blue, because if you ever cast this and your opponent essence scatters it, you're like, oh, okay,
It is 4 mana. Four's a lot of mana,
yeah.
turns out.
Actually, in this format, I think four is a ton of mana. Like 4 mana creatures, especially in the best deck, which I think is red green, as I've said a couple times. I think red green aggro is incredible, and usually I want
Yeah.
like 8 to 9 2 drops just in that deck as far as creatures go. 4 mana, you only want to play like a couple of things. So Wingmantle Chaplain is actually pretty expensive in this format, if you
Yeah.
ask me.
Yeah. I would be pretty confident in having like I would be pretty confident in getting to 4 mana every game.
Yeah,
Like it's definitely always a playable card. The problem is it's hard to double spell with it.
yeah,
So it's hard to go, Wingmate Chaplain into another defender and immediately get that value before they can try to remove it. Which I mean, frankly, like I always try to make sure I've got, at least one card that's just absurdly expensive. Like, I don't know, must be an ancient or something. That's a seven
yeah, yeah.
drop. And it's just like, yeah, I'm gonna get there eventually, and it's gonna, it's gonna pay me off. But yeah, you can't have 8 4 drops in your deck. You're just gonna fall under the bus as red tries to jam over you.
Yeah. So on that, the subject of like having to like double spell and stuff like that, I think that is one of the things that makes Wingmantle Chaplain so like skill testing, because playing with this card a lot of times, I've noticed that there's a lot of games where I'll be under pressure and I'll have to very very
Mm.
carefully consider whether or not there's combat tricks, whether or not I can afford to block with my defenders, because like especially in like best of three, once your opponent sees the chaplain or like specific key defenders, they know what's going on. They know that eventually the
Yeah.
Wingmantle Chaplain is coming. So they're incentivized to get all of those things out the way, use their combat tricks to push through your defenders, use removal spells on the important ones to try and make sure you get as few birds as possible. And the games where I've won against aggro, I had to like take hits when I didn't think I needed to, not block when I had obvious free blocks lined up, stuff like that, just to play around combat tricks. I think it's a very cool deck, and I think it's a very skill testing card, and I'm very, very happy that it got printed. But a lot of
Yeah.
people, for some reason, people seem to think that it's like just as bad as, God, what was the one in Ikoria? Zenith Flare. People have compared it to Zenith Flare, which I think is
No,
extremely
no, 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 no,
disingenuous.
no,
It's nowhere near that.
no. Not
Like,
a chance.
I've
No.
had a lot of games where I watched a Wingmantle Chaplain resolve and I still won. And I've had games
Yeah,
where I've played a Wingmantle Chaplain and I still lost. Zenith Flare, when that card resolved, the game is just over. Like, it's just done.
yeah. Like, you know what beats the chaplain? The 4 mana 4/4 reach card
Yeah,
in green.
it's a pretty good. Yeah.
Magnagoth Sentry. You just play it, and it just
And,
beats that card.
and I don't even think that card's like especially great in this format. I think it's just
No.
really really good against birds.
Yeah, it's just a square stat line with reach,
And
and that's enough.
I think like the deck's even worse in like best of three, where like all the green domain decks have access to the spider, like the 1/3.
Yes, the
Yeah,
snare spinner. Yeah,
I really really like it, but I just don't I don't think it's nearly as oppressive as a lot of people are arguing.
yeah.
Next up on my list is the Elder Dragon War. Have you
Oh
seen that one?
yes. I haven't. Well, I haven't played against it. Let me just pull it up. I
So
had a look at it. That's right. So yeah, I looked at this card for cubes and that's for making things. It seems like an absolute beater. Like, sure, at 4 mana, like in red, I feel like you play 4 lands and then you just hold them back and discard them all and draw off of those cards.
yeah.
I think in like as the top end of an aggressive deck, this is such a beating.
Well, you just can't lose. Like, there's no way to make this card bad.
Yeah. Do you
Like,
need a board wipe? It's a board wipe. Do you need card advantage? It's not quite card advantage, but it's card selection. And do you need just a big beefy creature for 4 mana?
yeah, like
Yeah, you got it.
the fail case is you have a 4 mana 4/4 flyer. That's the fail
Oh
case.
no. Oh
Ah.
no.
So this
Uh,
card is easily one of the best ones in the set. Like, there's not even anything to really say about it. Like, it just does pretty much everything you want to do because of read ahead. I really really like read ahead as a mechanic. I think it's one of the more interesting things that they've done with sagas, because that's been one of the big things about sagas that's made them suck, is that some of them just aren't good.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do like a lot of the sagas, and the fact that some of them are slower is part of their balancing factors, but it's also like, yeah, adding choice, adding modality to these things makes them really, really interesting.
And it's flavorful too, because you're like, all right, enough of this. Let's get to the good part.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, okay. This next one is one of the more groan-worthy ones, Sphinx of Clear Skies. Yeah,
Oh yeah, yep, yep.
yeah. Have you
I've
played
I've
against
died
this
to
one?
this card. I've
Yeah.
died to this card.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
Um, 5 mana 5/5 with flying, and I can't shoot it with something.
No.
Oh boy. Oh boy. It doesn't even matter the domain ability. Like
No.
it just
It's
doesn't
just
matter
enough.
that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Like if I took away that ability, I would still be scared of this card. Like it's just such a bundle of stats and protection and evasion that it feels unbeatable sometimes.
yeah. Without the domain ability, it's like a rare basically, and then like
Yeah,
with the domain
absolutely.
ability, it's like, oh, okay, cool. So not only does my
Yeah.
opponent have a thing I can't ever block or kill, also they get to draw one of their best top whatever cards. Even if you literally have only basic islands, you're gonna draw a card.
Yeah.
Like,
It's just draw a card.
there's no way to make this card bad. Like I've had this card like hit the battlefield once and immediately die, and I was still like, whatever. I mean, I got one for one. And then you know what happened? I just got it back later in the game with an Urborg repossession,
Oh
and I
no.
played it out, and my opponent
Oh
conceded the game.
yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm glad that this is a mythic because if I
Yeah,
had to deal with this in like half the drafts I play, it would just be so miserable.
yeah. It's like a practically Glorybringer level, where it just hits the
Yeah,
battlefield, and your opponent's like, oh, all right, well, I better deal with this right now, or else I basically lose the game immediately.
yeah, f- basically.
Yeah,
At least it doesn't have haste.
for real. And, like, it's not even a bad blocker, like a 5/5. Like a 5/5 for 5 is
Yeah,
just way above par on like any creature, especially a blue
blue.
flying
Yeah,
ward 2. Like
blue.
what the hell?
Blue didn't used to get these sorts of stat lines. Like back in those
Nothing used to
days.
get these stat lines.
True.
Nothing.
Green did. Green got square stat lines,
Like
but didn't get flying.
it took us years to get to the point where a 3 mana 2/3 flyer was like, oh wow, look, woo, whoa,
Whoa.
Windrake, eat your heart out. Look at how advanced we become. We have a third point of toughness. And now like Ragavan is like, oh cool, the one drop that does everything. Sphinx of Clear Skies. Oh, it stabilizes the board, impossible to kill, gets you card advantage. Like the mythics
Wow.
just do it all now.
Yeah. Oh
Ooh,
goodness.
here's one that people were talking about having constructed potential, and I have seen it in standard a little bit. Sarah Paragon.
Oh yeah. So I watch a decent amount of legacy content. And
You do some
I've
stuff with this.
I have seen Sarah Paragon in legacy deck lists. You know, because Lurrus is banned, and this does a pretty decent Lurrus impression. Um, it's yeah, it's the sort of thing that some decks just need. Um, I do think it's going to see constructed play, and obviously, if you see it in draft, just draft it. It's a flyer. It gives you card advantage. It's really good.
I
Um,
actually have a draft up on my channel where I play green red aggro, and I splash this
oh,
card.
you should. You
I
absolutely
just I
should.
like had lands. I had like two of the red white and like one of the green white, and then like
Yeah,
one of the salvage mana workers, and then like something else. Like, oh, we're just gonna cram it in there, whatever.
yeah. It'll work.
Ooh,
Like, what's the worst thing that can happen,
and
honestly?
I also had like a bunch of ways to loot, like the goblin picker and stuff like that. So if it was ever just sitting in my hand doing nothing, just get rid of it. Like that's another great thing about this
Yeah,
format. There's so many ways to get like extra card advantage and stuff. It's basically
yeah,
impossible to have
absolutely.
cards just sit in your hand doing nothing forever because there's just so much stuff to
Yeah,
do.
it's all gonna do something at some stage.
Another thing that this card doesn't spell out to you, but you can also like pay kicker costs on things that are 3 mana or less, like Keldon Strike Team, like the common
Yes,
that you
yeah,
kick and you
yeah.
get a pair of tokens. I've
Mm.
played 3 of those from the graveyard with this card and kicked them all. Which I mean, that's a lot
Wow.
of power and toughness, all with
I
haste.
didn't. Yeah, of course. I didn't even think about that, but of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
Oh wow.
strong. And then like people,
Yeah,
you don't even look at it, but like when this permanent is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, exile it, and you gain 2 life. So on top of that
yeah,
all, it also gains you life.
yeah.
Although to be honest, every time I
Oh,
look at
I
this
did.
card, I think it
Oh.
has lifelink. It just looks like it has lifelink.
It doesn't do that good of a Lurrus impression, you know.
What were you
I
about to
did.
say?
Okay, so I do remember something interesting about the card in that. So I watched Judge Dave on YouTube, who does daily like judge videos, or like basically all the weird parts of Magic. He does a daily video going over like what happens with the interaction between these two cards. And the other week he put out a video that just said, "Does Sarah Paragon work?" And the answer, according to him, is well, according to him and according to the comprehensive rules, is no. Uh, as it's written, and with the way that the comprehensive rules are written, the card should not gain that line of text when it hits the battlefield. Obviously, like this is what the card does. You play it like you think it should be played,
Yeah,
obviously.
like
But
it's
it's like
relatively intuitive, but like the comprehensive rules of Magic
yeah,
just don't actually
but
work.
yeah, next time we get a comprehensive rules update, it's probably going to have an update specifically because of Sarah Paragon.
Nice. That's always pleasant. I've been around for a few of those rules fiascos. I think the biggest one was Hostage Taker,
Oh
the one
yes,
from
yeah,
Ixalan. That was
that
very
one caused
funny.
a lot of yeah, caused a
Ooh,
lot of issues.
this is the first common I have on the list, and it's
Hmm.
not so much power level so much as it is like an interesting bit of like magic history being written, and that is Battlefly Swarm.
I've seen this one. Oh yeah, that's right.
1/1
Yes.
flying can gain Death Touch.
It's it's okay.
Yeah, so like
I mean,
like you've probably played with a lot of cards like Typhoid Rat, stuff like that, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then you've probably played with a lot of like
Yeah.
1/1 flyers for one that like peck in for a couple damage.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
just combines both of those into one thing, and it's like it just isn't bad. It's just impossible to make this card awful.
It's yeah, it kind of does everything. Like early game,
Yeah.
it just hits. Late game, like early game, it just bashes in for a bit of damage each turn. You know, a 1/1 flyer is perfectly reasonable. And late game, are you really gonna attack with that gigantic creature of
Yeah.
yours? Like, I'm just gonna pay you black and kill it.
Like
Like,
those other cards, like Typhoid Rats and like 1/1 flyers, there's always like a game where you just draw it in the late game and you're like, oh, this card just does nothing. But this
yeah,
never does nothing. There's never a point in any game where you're like, oh my god, Battlefly Swarm, that just doesn't do anything. It's always doing something, and I like that.
it always works.
Yeah, like it's gonna trade for the biggest thing your opponent wants to throw at it, short of like literally like Danitha or something.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
another fun thing is that the premier removal in green is actually based on fights like Bite Down. So you can give this thing
Yeah,
Death Touch and then just kill anything with it, which I've done a
yeah.
lot of
I
times.
did. Yeah, I haven't done it with the Battlefly Swarm yet, but I've done it a whole bunch with that Death Touch Manador for 3 mana in green.
Yeah.
That one's been a lot of fun to tail swipe people.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think that card is very interesting. It doesn't make my list, but I really, really like it. I think it's a very interesting
Yeah,
line of
it's no,
stats and abilities.
yeah, it's definitely not it's not an outstanding card by any means, but sometimes you just need one more bit of ramp to get you to like 5 mana
Yeah, and then
sometimes.
the Death Touch is just a nice consolation prize for the fact that you're playing a 3 mana dork.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ooh, here's another fun one. This is one of the commons that, honestly, I think could have been uncommon, and that is Maria's Outrider.
Right, that's a white one? Oh no,
No,
red.
that's
Wasn't it?
that's the four
It's a
and a
red one.
red 4/4 with
That's it.
reach.
Reach. Yeah. Enters,
Yes,
deals damage to the opponents. It's really good. Like we were talking before about there's the green 4 mana for reach.
yes,
And that's pretty good.
yeah.
If you attach a lightning bolt to it, that's really good. It's
Let's be
really
honest.
good.
This card is a lot less lightning bolt and a lot more deal five. This is
Yeah.
lava axe level card. Like I've been dealt five by
Yeah.
this card way more times than I ever thought I would. I had a game where my opponent played three of these in a row. I went to five.
That's a lot of life
I
loss.
didn't even get
That's a
attacked in
lot
that
of
game.
life.
I didn't get attacked at any point before that. My life total went to five just because they
Yeah.
played three commons.
And they have 12 worth of stats as well.
Yes. So yeah, I was
Oh
in a bad. I
man.
lost that game.
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
not win that game. And then
That's very understandable actually, yeah.
and it has secret reach because it's an archer. It doesn't. I mean, like obviously there's like an archer riding atop that thingy there, but like you don't think about it having reach. I've seen some
No,
people
I
send
think
their
about
flying creatures straight
the
into it.
dog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it looks like the big thing. It looks like it should have trample or something. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
this card's been a big overperformer. Every time I see this card, I'm like, oh, well, that's not going to wheel, and it never ever does because people see the power of it right on its face. And I think in green red aggro, this is like the only 5 drop short of a rare that I would actually ever play. I don't really think
Oh,
like almost anything else comes even remotely close because this is just
yeah.
like so far above par compared to a lot of the other things in the format. As far as like
I've
getting
had
your
a good
opponent dead.
yeah. Yeah, in terms of 5 drops, the only other 5 drop I've had any amount of success with that's a common, oh, or is it uncommon? The worm that has vigilance and trample. It's a 5 mana 5/4.
Yeah, that one
That
is
that
it's
one that
definitely
one
strong.
does just yeah, that one just does get the job done. Like it attacks, it defends,
The
it has
vigilance.
reach in case of the flight. Oh,
No, no,
vigilance,
no.
yeah.
It has vigilance and trample.
Vigilance.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Sorry, yeah,
So it
vigilance
can't be
trample. Yeah, it
jumped and it
attacks,
stays
it
back to
blocks.
block.
Yeah, like it just does it all. It just does everything you need it to.
Yeah, I've definitely died to that one a few times. The only reason in specifically green red that I put this one over it is because the only way I ever usually end up losing in green red, if like I actually don't get mana screwed or flooded, is by just being outclassed on the ground. And Mary's
Yeah,
Outrider just
yeah.
gives you the immediate value. But I've definitely
Oh,
seen like a lot of
absolutely.
decks where like my opponent just plays like two of those 5/4s, and I'm like, well, I'm not jumping these, am I? Even if I'm trading with
Oh,
like a Battlefly Swarm or something, I'm still taking damage in that exchange, and
yeah,
it all goes downhill for me very quickly.
yeah. It's fair. That's very
Ooh.
fair.
The next one up is Guardian of Nubinalia, and we've already talked about that one. But I just wanted to also say that there's only actually two cards short of rares that even handle that card, and that is Tribute to Urborg, the black -2/-2 with kicker,
Mm,
and Prayer of
yes.
Binding. That can do it at
Terrifying.
instant
Oh yeah,
speed.
the exiles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have like the
Oh,
common. They have the
there's
common white
another.
one, but that one's
Yeah,
sorcery, so like you can't get a 2-for-1 with it. It's just a 1-for-1.
yeah.
Like these, you can actually get a 2-for-1. Like they try to make it
Mm, mm, mm.
indestructible, and then you do this in response. And
Yeah,
like, oh well, I guess I got
yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
Ooh,
Yeah.
here's probably the one that I think is the most grown worthy besides one other card, and that is Namada Primeval Warden. That's the 3/4
What?
tree folk with reach.
Sorry, let me get back to my. Sorry, I've lost my tab somewhere. There we go. Warden. All right. Ah, yes, yeah, 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 yeah. I haven't been. I want to draft this card. Uh,
Well,
Golgari is like my favorite color combination. And
well,
it looks so cool.
I'll give you one hint. When you play this card, make sure you only play it when you can immediately find a way to make the value work. Like, make sure that
Okay.
your opponent
Yeah.
has to block, or that you have a removal spell, or that you have a combat trick up, because your opponent absolutely has to kill this. Because if they don't, that the game just goes wrong. Like it just goes wrong
Yeah.
so fast. Like the exile
Yes.
is much more relevant than it seems. There's actually a pretty good amount of
Mm,
stuff in
mm.
this format that cares about the graveyard, and
And death
affecting that
triggers.
is
Yeah.
very annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a surprising amount of reanimation in black.
Yes.
Yeah, being able to mess with that is really big.
Next up, we have Sunbathing Rootwalla, and this one is
Oh yeah.
pretty, pretty obvious. I think probably the best green 2-drop outside of specifically. Actually, I think it might just be the best green 2-drop that isn't removal.
Oh, I might contend you on that.
What
I think
which
there's
one
a
am I
better
not
green
thinking of?
two drop out there.
Which one am I not
I
thinking
think
of?
Yavimaya Iconoclast, the 2 mana 3/2
Ah,
with trample.
you see, I always play it on three. That's
Yeah, well that's fair. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I've had games where I've played that on 2 and it's just good
yeah. Oh
enough.
yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
know?
Like if I don't have a
It
better
just
two in
gets
my
people.
hand, or like if I can't like if I don't have a third land, I will often play the Iconoclast out. It's definitely in like the upper echelons of playables in the red green deck. But Rootwalla is it's kind of like the face card of the format. When you think about like domain in this format, you can't not think about the Rootwalla.
Yeah. It's I've had mixed success with it, honestly, because it is good. But I always feel like on 4, I want to be casting a 4.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Usually, what you want to do is be attacking when you have this card, because it's really
Mm,
awful
mm.
on defense. Like it is just
Yeah.
really annoying to have to leave up mana to play this to activate this ability. So on like turn 4, when you have your fourth land, you just attack with this. If you have good attacks, and good attacks
Yeah.
means if they block and you pump, you win.
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah,
that means,
exactly.
because you keep up the
Yeah.
threat of activation, and like you don't want them to block because you want to obviously develop your board, but if they do block, well, that's just their card, just
And
gone.
if they want to throw away cardboard, they can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's usually fine with you because the games do eventually come down to card advantage, and your opponent does want to get this off the board. That said, I have been in positions where I've made my opponent spend mana on this, knowing that it would take their whole turn, and I was okay with that because all I needed to do was last another turn to like set up more of my mana in my board state, and I was okay spewing a
Yeah.
card to do it because people don't like passing up on that value. And that's one of the funny things about this format is like with all the kicker and all like the card advantage, people get locked into trying to get the maximum value out of all their cards, and it's not actually always correct to try and go for card advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you need to go for like direct. Yeah.
Yeah, like I've had
Direct
games where
everything.
like I've oh god, what is it? It's like Rona's Vortex, the 1 mana thing that has kicker for 2 and a black, and you put it on the bottom of the library instead. I've had games where I
Yeah.
just bounce something to my opponent's hand and just waste the whole card because it was more
Yeah.
important that I keep my life total high, and I won that game easily
Mm-hmm.
because I stabilized. Whereas if
Yeah.
I didn't cast that spell and waited till I could use it as an actual removal spell, I just would have died. And that's another reason that I think Sunbathing Rituala is it is good, but I don't think it's like obviously the most insane thing in the format. It's just a very 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 strong two, and I've seen this
Yeah.
thing be
It's
+5
a
+5 a
two-drop
lot
that
of
you're gonna
times.
see. Yeah. You're gonna see this guy around a lot. He's
Oh
a
yeah,
common. He's very good, and people know this.
like if,
Like,
if, if
yeah,
you trade like year two for this thing, you're getting away with something.
yeah, exactly.
Ooh, the number one. And all right, so I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. What do you think the number one card is? This is the card that I would say is
Hmm.
probably the most blatantly annoying, obviously powerful one in the set. Like you're first
Is
picking
it?
this card above almost everything, probably over everything.
Okay, my first pick does it. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Of the commons, I'm gonna say aggressive sabotage,
No,
the discard
no,
spell.
no, no, no.
It's not
Oh,
that.
no,
No,
it's a
I mean,
mythic.
are we
It's a
talking?
mythic.
Are we talking? Oh, we're talking mythics. Okay, I'm not sure. All right. Well, in terms of mythics, well, okay, it's probably Sheldred, isn't it?
It is not Shuldred. Do you want to know what it
Really?
is?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, we've already talked
Shivan
about Sarah
Devastator.
Paragon. Oh, yeah. Yep, yep, yep. Absolutely.
So, like, I really, really like Shuldred. And Shuldred's really good. But at the end of the day, Shuldred is a 4/5. And Shuldred does require you to be at, like, relative parity. It can't just immediately be, like, a thing that drops down on the board and your opponent dies. Every time my opponent casts a Shivan Devastator, I lose the game. Uh,
Yeah.
Usually, this card is like at least a 4/4 flyer with haste, and it turns out there are very few turns of Magic where you're holding up an instant speed removal spell that can deal with the 4/4 flyer. Usually, you're taking at least one hit from this, and God forbid your
Yeah.
opponent has any kind of way to get it back. I've seen this thing hit the battlefield as a 10/10 flyer before. Like,
It is
yeah,
terrifying.
you
Like
like. Go ahead.
if games aren't over by like turn 5, it's going to like turn 12, turn 13, that sort of thing. You're going to have a lot of mana. And this is one of the best top deck cards I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
It's so good.
like even in your opening hand, you just like play out all your stuff, and you're like, yeah, sure, attack with my stupid thing, trade a bunch of stuff off, like throw all my stuff out there, play out all your other nonsense, and like encourage them to use their removal. And then on a turn when they like tap out and they're at like a relatively okay life total, they think they've stabilized. You're like, oh, by the way, have a 6/6 flying haste. Good luck. And then your
Best of
opponent
luck, my
dies.
friend. Yeah.
Yeah. Like when you play in best of three and you see in game one that your opponent has this, for the entire game you're like, oh god, I can't even take this hit. And do I have to chump here? Do I have to chump so I'm not dead to Shivan Devastator next turn? Like, what am I even
Mm.
doing? Do I have outs? And often the answer is no, you just don't have outs. Although, funnily, there's a lot of funny stuff that you could do with this card. And one of the funniest ones, um, oh god, no, I'm not thinking of the right thing. I think that was Cube. I was thinking of, but there was something funny I was thinking about where because this card it has one casting cost, you could do some very funny stuff with it. Like you can actually cast it off of Sarah Paragon.
Uh,
I want to say that you
yes.
can only do it as a 2/2, but you
Yeah,
still
I
can
think you
cast
can
it
only
off
do
of
it as
there.
a 2/2, but yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's like perfectly. I've actually seen this come into play as a 2/2 flyer. Like somebody paid 3 for it, and I'm
Mm.
like, oh, well, that's a little uh, annoying. And then it proceeded to deal me like 8 damage, which sucked.
Yeah, we've I mean, we've sung the praises of small little flying men so far, and this
It,
is, a small little flying man that can also be a big, really big flying man. Uh, this was one of the first cards spoiled for DMU, and I was so excited to see this card. Like, it's so cool, and it's so good, and it just fits. It just wherever you need it, it's just gonna do the job.
yeah. I mean, I've,
The
I've
game.
played it out as a blocker before. Like, I played it as a 5 mana 4/4, and then my opponent, like, couldn't attack into it, or the
Yeah,
turn
they
that they
just
did
had to
attack into it, they
stop.
had to use a combat trick, and it still
Yeah.
just does the stuff you need. Like, it's just really hard to make X spells bad when they're creatures usually, and this definitely fits the bill in that regard.
Yeah, this is certainly a lot better than an IV Elemental. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Now, as far as awful cards in the format, what would you say has been extremely underwhelming for you?
Underwhelming. I haven't had a lot of. Okay, there have been a couple times where some of the mythics in the set just don't work great. Like it doesn't.
It's Karn.
It just, I mean, yeah, Khan's not great. Yeah, look, Khan, it's fine. It isn't as good as it could be. I've I've been I've been underwhelmed by some of the sagas, not because of power level. They're all reasonably strong and, worth playing. But in terms of like play patterns, like read ahead, it gives you modality, but I just don't like them as much. I don't know.
No,
Bit of
that's
an odd
fair.
one.
No, that makes sense. I actually kind of agree with you there. Like, it makes the cards more playable, and it generally kind of it makes it less of a feel bad when you open up like that card and you put it in your deck and you draw it. Like, what is the one? The Cruelty of Gix, where one of the modes is you lose 3 life, and like
Mm,
if that card didn't have read ahead, then
yeah,
there would just be times when that card you can't play it. You just can't do
it
it at
would be
all.
completely useless. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
in a lot of games actually, but it's just very very dangerous to
Yeah.
cast that.
No,
But
yeah, and most of them are built like that, where it's built around having those cards. Yeah.
I mean, I think that card's still kind of insane to be honest. But it's as an example,
Yeah. Yeah,
have you
absolutely.
played against that one?
Um, I don't think I have actually. I think I've seen it.
Do you know what
I
it
think I've
does off the
seen it
top of
when
your head?
somebody else was drafting, but I haven't. Yeah, haven't actually come across it yet.
Hold on one sec.
Yeah.
Geeks MTG. Yeah. So this is
One
a.
one card. mm,
Oh, I was about to say this is a 3 black for a 5 mana enchantment saga with read ahead. The first chapter is the target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a creature or planeswalker. They discard
Oh
it.
yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
Yeah, then you search your library for a
Yeah.
card, put it into your hand, shuffle, you lose 3 life.
Those three,
And then the chapter
and
3,
then
you get the best creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your
a
control.
graveyard is
Yes,
such a
it feels
cool,
so bad.
such a cool set of words. Oh my
Yes,
goodness.
because like you take their best creature and then you get it. Like
Yeah.
every time my opponents play this against me, it's never something out of their graveyard. It's always the thing that they got from me, which hurts
Yeah.
so bad.
Yeah.
And the worst part is every time I play this card and I get something from my opponent, they use the bounce spell. They use a bounce spell and get it back to their hand.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
oh,
back
cool,
to the
nice,
hand.
good job,
Yeah.
great job, cool.
It's rough.
But yeah, this card's a really a bit of a beating. It's
Mm,
if you can get
absolutely.
yourself into a position where the losing 3 life isn't going to kill you, this card will win you a lot of games. But what were you about
Yeah.
to say?
Well, I was just thinking about the other reanimation. Well, the other major reanimation set is Sheoldred's Restoration,
Ooh,
and that's terrible. This card's horrendous.
I
It's
I,
so
I,
bad.
I don't know what they were doing with that one. Uh,
It's it's embarrassing. Like, why do you need to lose life at all? It's 4 mana.
yeah,
It's not good.
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't really know what they were doing with this, and especially in like this set, it just doesn't feel like there are things you want to reanimate.
No,
Not for this
it's
price. Like most of the stuff in the format by the time you have 4 mana, you're just gonna like cast most of it anyway.
Yeah.
So like you're not getting like a substantial discount. You're getting like a
Yeah.
1 maybe 2 mana discount. Like the best thing at like common or uncommon in the format for you to reanimate is like Mossbeard Ancient, and like that's cool, I guess. But
But you still lose life
yeah,
overall if you
yeah,
don't pay the kicker. Just like,
you could die
yeah.
before the enter the battlefield trigger resolves because you're losing 7.
Hmm. Yeah.
I've never seen this card hit the stack and been like, oh god, what am I gonna do? I've seen one of my opponents cast this card, and it was really bad. They lost a bunch of life. I untapped and killed their creature, and then I killed them.
It's
So
I'm kind of sad. I'm kind of sad about how
yeah,
bad this guy has
like
turned
it's a
out.
story spotlight card. It's also an uncommon, and like it has like every like line of text besides you lose life equal to its mana cost is something that I think is cool. Like usually like a 4 mana weird reanimation spell with like a kicker of 2 and a white. Like before I even see anything else on it, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of excited. What's the kicker gonna do? Like maybe you get back like two
Yeah.
things or something. And I think that'd be like a much cooler version of this, but instead it's just absolutely
Yeah.
mediocre. But as far as disappointing cards in the set go, I think just because of the history of Karn, I think Karn takes the cake. And I don't even think Karn
Khan's
is
had a
that bad.
few.
I think
Yeah.
like so obviously the first Karn
Khan's
is
here
insane.
for the next set. Khan is here to make Brothers War cooler. Um, yeah, like Power Stone tokens are going to be a thing there. I'm very certain of this fact, and like, yeah,
I just don't know if
I
they're
think
gonna
I think
do enough. Like I mean I'm like really hoping that there's some crazy cool things you can do with ramp, because right now
yeah.
standard is I just can't imagine our current standard going to a place where people are trying to cast like 7 mana cards.
Yeah. I mean we don't currently have them. But I mean the thing is, the mana from those Power Stone tokens can't be used to cast non-artifact spells. Can be used to activate abilities
Yes,
of non-land artifact spells.
yes.
So things like Lair of the Hydra, I think, is that still going to be in standard or is that
I
rotated
don't think it will
out?
be.
No, it's rotated out.
Yeah.
But if we get another like manland or like an animated artifact or something that turns into an XX creature, that could be a lot. You could build those up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think like my main qualms with this card are that the Power Stone comes in to play tapped, and that the
Mm.
minus ability requires you to pay mana. Like
Yeah,
I don't know if it's
yeah.
just like they know what's coming and maybe it would be too crazy if it came into play untapped, or maybe they
Yeah.
think that having to pay mana is like necessary because not having to pay mana would be very annoying to just draw a card or something. Maybe they're
I
just
mean,
trying to get
yeah.
away from the standard like +1, like get a card, -2, protect yourself or something style of
Yeah.
Planeswalker. But
Yeah, exactly.
also, I think the alt is just actually quite underwhelming, especially in limited.
Oh, yeah, no. This mythic planeswalkers are either incredibly strong and limited or completely useless. And this
Like
one is completely useless. It's yeah.
there's been a lot of games. I think actually, well, there's every game I've played against this card. I've had my opponent play it, and then they immediately +1 because they spent all their mana on this and they can't -1, and
Mm.
then I just
And
ignore
then you
it.
just kill it.
I
Yeah.
don't even kill it. I just attack my opponent. They spent their whole turn 4 making a tapped Power Stone token. And then the next
Yeah.
turn,
Yeah,
if
that's
they
fun.
want to not do anything and pay mana into drawing a card, I'm like, cool. I'm gonna play another Yavimaya Iconoclast and say good luck.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, best of luck.
yeah, like literally. I've been
Yeah.
I've seen this card in one video from somebody else where they altered it, and they had literally 4 Power Stone tokens. And even
Yeah.
dealing 1 damage to any target 4 times a turn, they didn't win. Like, they just lost.
Mm,
And the thing that
mm.
they lost to was actually Wingmantle Chaplain, but that's a whole different story. Okay, like, I'm just saying, like, it just is not very. I don't know what they were going for here. I mean, maybe it's the fact that it's a 4 mana
I think,
colorless
yeah.
planeswalker, and they didn't want to make it like, oh, look, it's a card that any deck can play. Let's just make it busted.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna have to hold off like fully evaluating this card until we see Brother, because it is clearly trying to, be a setup card for it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it still may be the case that when Brothers War comes out, it's not even going to shake things up until we see some more formats rotate out. Because like for the longest time, there was this talk of like, oh look, here's the big powerful sets, and then things are kind of on a downswing, and we're in like the medium-ish sets where things are more battle cruiser and rampy, and then oh look, we're
Yeah.
on the upswing as we get these basically
Well,
block
this is
constructed standard
yeah.
formats.
I mean, this is the first set after rotation, so it's got just about as much, you know, market share as it can get, really.
Yeah. But I don't think there's been anything else in the format that I've been like, oh my god, this is just far and away one of the most disappointing things, except for that one red rare. No, it's not enchantment. It's like a sorcery or something. What is it called? Like chaotic transformation.
Oh, yeah, yeah, the Chaos Warp and a whole bunch of stuff.
Yes, chaotic transformation. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Like 3 of the times that I've played sealed, this has been in my rare slot at least once, and I'm just like,
Aw.
oh, cool, nice. I'll just put that in the pile. Like,
Yeah, it just doesn't do very much. Yeah, not
I don't
great.
think. I'm trying to envision a standard format where this will do something. Like it might, but
This is a commander card.
yes,
This is a commander card.
I actually had a commander deck like based around this effect. It was like the Rogue Rack,
Mm.
the 0 mana guy,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then like Thrasios, and then I could just play like all of the blue and red versions. I think there's even like one
yeah.
green one, and then you just play out like a Rogue Rack for 0, and then you just mana ramp as hard as you can, and then put a giant Eldrazi into play.
Mm.
It was a really cancerous deck. People did not like it.
That's kind of mean.
I mean, I had a history of making with extremely limited budgets some of the most unfriendly decks that you've ever seen. Like I had a Saheeli deck, the one that you can like plus to make your next spell cost cheaper for how many artifacts you have.
Yeah.
And I was casting like
Yes.
turn
Yeah.
4 expropriates and stuff. I was not the person you wanted to
Ah,
see at the table.
that's kind of crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Well, that's pretty much everything about those cards that I wanted to talk about. Now, there is
Yeah.
one archetype that I wanted to speak about, but I'm going to give us one quick pause for a second intermission here. Three,
Uh-huh.
2, 1, pause. All right, we're back from that second intermission, and we're actually going to wrap things up here now. Laura, would you prefer to tell everybody where they can reach you and what sort of stuff you have going
Yeah,
on?
sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Twitter at Laura _is _trans. I'm also on Cube Cobra at Ticton. You can find me by just searching up Cube Cobra Proliferate Cube. You can also, I'm little secret spoiler announcement. I might be starting up a YouTube channel soon, so hopefully we'll have you on as well.
That'd be pretty cool.
Have some fun there.
All right. Well, I have on my
Um,
end, I have your Twitter up right now, where everybody can see your tag, and then I have
yeah.
Tictin up on Cube Cobra here for people to look at as well, so people will be able to
Yeah.
easily find you if they'd like to. Continue.
Um, I'd I'd love to give a shout out to all the wonderful people in the Cube community. So people like CubeCon, the people working on CubeCon. We've got Lucky Paper Radio. We've got uh like Anthony Maddox. We've got a whole bunch of people there, and it really does make it makes Cube so much more fun to see other people talking about a whole bunch of stuff that they want to do.
This has been really cool. Thank you so much for coming on. I
Yeah.
am Robot Rallis. You can find me on Twitter at honestly unusual. Very very simple, easy to remember. You can find me on YouTube at Robot Rallis. That's the full thing, Robot Space Rallis with two L's. I release draft content on a regular basis. I've been uploading a little bit less recently because of burnout with the format, just kind of, getting tired of drafting for the 60th to 70th time of the same format and waiting on some stuff to go up on Modo. But a lot of interesting stuff going on. Release a lot of videos surrounding news and stuff in Magic, and occasionally I'll be recording episodes like this with interesting and special guests like Laura. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you've enjoyed this content, and feel free to look up my articles at hipstersofthecoast.com. Most of them are going to be under Limited, under the Formats tab, and Hipsters of the Coast is sponsored by cardkingdom.com. You can find pretty much everything related to Magic that you could possibly look for, and I've actually just recently put in an order for a few cards from there myself, although unfortunately they haven't given me a discount. Stinker there, but thank you so much for tuning in. Try and have yourself a wonderful night. Please feel free to leave a comment, like, and possibly subscribe. Until next time.